major spirit of this workshop is to get familiar with this ODTM concept. And some of the members are new and some other members are already using the model. So what the main reason we conduct this workshop was has been a quite a few delayed a lag happened in the researches in ODTM since last year due to lockdown and various issues. However, major scientific goals has this ODTM component in it, research goals. So we thought of kind of rejuvenating the spirit of this ODTM and in terms of a workshop. So we all kind of forget about some of the details of the ODTM, and so members need some kind of a refreshing how ODTM works, etc. So and also ODTM is lacking a manual. So maybe during this workshop, some of us will be developing a detailed manual for ODTM also. So in this view, we started this workshop. So this workshop is a closed workshop. There is no outsiders involved. Only our group members who would like to use ODTM. Okay, so if you are not really plan to use ODTM, it will not be a big benefit. But still, if you want to get to know about it, and especially people working in oceanography, may get more benefit of using ODTM. So so they will benefit. And overall the main instructor is I will give an introductory lecture, but Shikha and Anju will be the one teaching the technical handling and how to run, set it up, etc., testing the output and all. Anju and Shikha will take over, and we will invite Prajisha towards the end of the workshop where he will teach us how a parallelization is done, and how if somebody wants to contribute a module, somebody wants to write a subroutine to ODTM, it should be FMS compatible, flexible modeling system compatible. So that Prajesh will teach the architecture, how one should write from the very beginning. We hope Prajesh will be having the most of the lectures at the end of this workshop, which is with this workshop we are planning as like a one month stretch or more. We are having it every Tuesday and the Thursday morning 10:30 to 12. So it's a kind of a time kind of we kept recurring every week. So people we can keep this timing noted in for this activity. So attending this, what we expect is that one will get an idea how to utilize this model for a specific purpose. For young people, this will be useful. And another thing is that we also want to address few key issues regarding ODTM. ODTM having some certain issues. We identified issues like it has some underrepresentation of mesoscale features in the ocean. It has some conservative issues between tracers and momentum. So those kind of fine details and more modification to ODTM will be discussed towards the end of this workshop. And depending and looking at how we need a modification, the workshop may still further in continue with the members involved. Also there are issues to in the verification of ODTM had multiple versions. One was serial version, then parallel version. So thorough validation between various versions are also lacking. So those kind of issues we will address during this workshop. But any workshops should have a proper beginning. So best first then for this workshop, definitely it is introducing what is ODTM, because most of you may be not knowing ODTM, some of you may be already working on ODTM. And if your people are familiar and not familiar with ODTM, there's still a chance that to get to know about the model, how does it work, and what is how this model is designed, etc. So I will begin today's lecture by spending maybe 1 hour maximum in this way, and we can discuss the doubts and all, maybe spending another few half an hour or so. So I have a so now the background of developing this ODTM is that the ODTM is nothing but ocean dynamic thermodynamic model. Okay, so it is there are a lot of models in the community. So there will be questions like why we need a new model, what is the reason for this, etc. will come. So I think that's what I'm going to introduce why this model is important, and how it can be used in a particular research for the benefit of the on scientific research interest. So that those kind of aspect I will discuss. So let me without spending much time on introduction, then let me go to the slides directly. So I will share my slides. Okay, so this is the introduction I'm going to take, ODTM introduction. during this workshop. So ocean dynamic thermodynamic model is the full name of ODTM. So let me go to the contents of this talk. So I will briefly introduce what the design and the validation of ODTM. ODTM is ocean dynamic thermodynamic model for the tropical study. So this model is basically suitable for tropical ocean studies. So why it is so? Because it is mostly suited for the tropical purposes. Its thermocline is kind of shallow. It's not very deep thermocline, and it has mostly baroclinic dynamics due to wind forcing. So these kind of things are more prominent in the tropical region. So it's an ideal model for tropical ocean, but this does not restrict its application to tropics alone. If somebody wants to study the mid latitude, they can port the model there and also do some study there. There is no issue with it. Okay, so now the second point I have to introduce is that the need for this model. Why we need this model and basic formulation of this dynamical and physical core and numerical implementation. So that is what I am going to introduce after that. Then we will talk about the validation, how the model is validated for the tropical Indian Ocean. And then we will also show some case study what we have done with this model for Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea mixing problems, few new insight, because this model is already applied for two important scientific problems of the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea, one each. And so that model is already applied in a real case, the serial version. So we will see how this model is utilized for a very quality research in the scientific community. Okay, so these are the content of this particular talk. Now, what is ODTM? So I already explained. ODTM stands for Ocean Dynamic Thermodynamic Model. So that is why O, D, and T and M are borrowed from. So this is an ocean dynamic model as well as a thermodynamic model. So in ocean works both dynamically physical forced and thermodynamically forced the components it has, right? So it is a combination of dynamic and thermodynamic model. So now basically it is a reduced gravity layered model. So this model is not a primitive equation model in the sense that it has no per definite level, that rather than it has a reduced gravity layered structure. So it's a layered model, but basically you can call it as an isopycnal model. Okay, it's not, the coordinates are not level surfaces, rather it's kind of a density surfaces, you can call it. So it is a reduced gravity layered model. There are n active layers. So the ocean is divided into n active layers. N means any number, can be 2, can be 3 and 5 and 10 and 20 as per the purpose of the researcher. So basically it is good for like 5 or 6 active layers. The first layer will represent the mixer layer and just beneath of it, and then the second layer will represent in between mixer layer and thermocline. Third will up to third layer, it will go up to thermocline, and then fourth and fifth will go below the thermocline. So this kind of arrangement is done, is what called the layered model. Okay, so each layer will have a property. We will come to that in detail. And what is a half layer? In the n layer structure, the last layer you call it half layer. Why it is half layer means because it is assumed that it is infinitely deep and it is motionless. Okay, so that's the concept of a reduced gravity model. We assume the last layer is half quiescent layer with a infinitely deep thickness, as well as it has no motion, it is rest. So that's the assumption. Why we need that important assumption, we will understand why we need to take that assumption in a reduced gravity model system. So when there is another term called reduced gravity, so why gravity is reduced, that also we will introduce. Okay, gravity, why it has to be reduced. So gravity is nothing but a restoration force. We all know that if a water column rise above its potential level, and then it has to be immediately brought back to its original potential, right? Because of the gravitational restoration or gravitational pull downward. So this gravity is very heavy. Okay, very strong. Okay, it's not as silly as you think. Suppose if you just drop a pencil from the table, it doesn't even wait for a fraction of a second. It immediately start accelerating downward. It's a very sudden force, instantaneous force. Okay, gravity doesn't wait for anybody. So gravity is a strong force, due to which the solutions we get also will have some consequences in it, especially very fast moving waves, etc. We tend to resolve in an ocean equation, which we don't like, for example, which is annoying because not of our concern. So we may have to filter out certain gravity waves. So we end up in reducing the value of gravity. What is gravity's value? Is 9.8 meter per second square. Everybody know, right? In every second, its a velocity increases by 9.8 meter per second. So it's accelerate. So gravity, this is a very huge force actually. Gravity can be immediately interpreted as a force if you apply on a unit mass. So it is a huge force involved in that. So we want to reduce it to a level for the interest of our kind of oceanographic solution. So that's why the concept of reduced gravity is borrowed. Okay, so this is a reduced gravity layered model with an inactive layer and a half quiescent layer. It is actually developed further from our previous researches. Now, what is new in ODTM is that it has an embedded thermodynamic model. So temperature and salinity is added to it. Earlier, it had no temperature and salinity, but now we added ODTM that has a temperature and salinity also with it. That's a new addition we made. And it has a embedded mixing parameterization at a very high resolution in the vertical. The earlier, so the reduced gravity model, we had no thermodynamics, no mixing, but now we had modified it to include more mixing, include the mixing parameterization and mixer layer depth and air sea fluxes and all it can calculate. So the thermodynamic activity is also included in the model. So that's kind of a new addition. Now, this is suitable for tropical ocean studies. The reason I said is because it's a layered model. So if we assume that thermocline is resolved in the first 2, 3, or 4 layers, so which is mostly good for a shallow thermocline region. You all know that thermocline of the tropical ocean is rather shallow compared to the mid latitude ocean, where thermocline can go very deep because of the surface cooling, etc. Right? So this is a kind of a kind of a we kind of it's more suitable for the tropical ocean studies. Now, because it is a workshop, I can introduce some brief history of ocean models. So ocean models has a long legacy. It is started in say 1960s. For example, in the beginning of the computer calculations in oceanography, the models also started evolving since then. So this kind of slide shows a numerical model in terms of its history. So this is actually taken from the Kanta Clayson book. This picture is constructed. I have constructed it, but this more of these literatures you can see in this Kanta Clayson book, which is ocean and oceanic processes for processes. That is that book's name. It's a very good book by International Geophysics series, published in 2002. So you can read that book and understand what are the history of model evolution in the oceanography. So the first line shows the one-dimensional mixer layer model for the upper ocean. So that was the first attempt towards the ocean modeling. It is not a general circulation model. Rather, they looked at the one-dimensional upper ocean model. Why? Because the earlier interest in the atmospheric ocean science is basically based on meteorology, right? Because people wants to study about the weather phenomenon, so they understood ocean is a part of it. So that's how oceanography evolved in that direction. So most important part of the ocean which interact with the atmosphere is the mixer layer. Mixer layer is the gateway between the ocean and the atmosphere, right? So you all know that. So mixer layer model started evolving. So what the earlier model attempts is a very classical method of Cross and Turner mixer layer scheme in 1966. They started developing, and this is basically looking at how the wind momentum is balanced in the upper mixer layer of the upper few meters of the ocean. So how the wind layer exerts a stress on the ocean, how the stress is communicating down the viscous layer across the ocean various layer in the surface few meters. So this is viscous transfer of momentum down, and due to which viscosity it has a mixing component, so it generates certain turbulence, and turbulence comes to a balance where the viscous transfer of the momentum get balanced with the local density stratification. So those earlier concept of Cross and Turner started appearing in 1966. Using that they were able to reproduce the SST evolution or a mixer layer depth evolution of certain locations in the ocean. They were started to simulate using that model. That time computer was not much available, no? Very limited resource of computer only available. Then the model has further transformed into Price et al. Model in Jim Price model in 1980. So what is that model? She said a little further application to the Cross and Turner scheme. It uses basically the same thing. Actually, it looks for the local density gradient within the ocean water in the upper few meters of the mixer layer and see whether the local density gradient is balanced by the buoyancy forcing, which can momentum forcing and heat flux forcing. Okay, these two forcing destroys the stratification, and stratification tries to regain its strength as it go down. So there is a competition between these two. By looking at the depth at which, or the layer at which this competition is satisfied, until then the mixing is allowed to happen. So that type of scheme is what in Price et al. Scheme in 1980. Then came a very important scheme called Miller and Emada, or turbulent closure scheme, in 1982. What is a turbulent closure scheme? It is nothing but the mixing is a turbulent phenomenon, and you have higher order terms in your fluid dynamics equation. So you will have a u prime, u prime square. So such types of equations will have. So they assumed the turbulent closure energy model is basically is a TKE balance model, where they have energy product buoyancy production, and TKE is balanced by the dissipation. So those level of concepts are there. Then what is a closure means that they have to truncate the higher order terms at a certain degree. Okay, so they truncated at a second degree or higher degree, according to which level 1, level 2, level 2.5, etc. evolved. So this is basically a thorough anatomy of how the turbulent energy budget happening in the mixer layer, according to which they were able to parameterize that. For example, the mixing coefficient is a function of certain like mixing length and stability and turbulent kinetic energy within produced due to the the buoyancy and momentum fluxes. So this is the basic concept in the closure concept. So this is a more of a energy conserved or energy balanced model. It is Miller and Yamada level 2 or level 2.5 or level 3 turbulent closure model. So this is respecting more of a realistic scenario of the turbulent mixing, and it has enjoyed a large success in those days. Even in the ocean or in the atmosphere, this model is heavily applied, and it was able to reproduce the observed boundary layer profiles of the ocean as well as the atmosphere using this turbulent closure scheme. So that was a very good success in understanding how the mixing can be parameterized in terms of the TKE energetic budget within the ocean. So an earlier model was not detailedly discussing how the energy is balanced, but this model start to discuss that part, and this has become one of the successful model which can reproduce the SST evolution, mixer layer evolution, barrier layer formation, inversion layer formation, etc., or isothermal layer formation, etc. Also in the atmospheric boundary layer, also it produced the inversion near the boundary layer, the capping at the end of the boundary layer, etc., was able to reproduced by this model. Then by 19, but this model has certain limitation, because it is a it may not work very well when the buoyancy is extremely large as compared to the momentum forcing. There are certain restrictions discussed about this model, especially in the application in the high latitude. Then came the another important ocean model mixing called KPP, or K profile parameterization, non-local profile parameterization mixing scheme in 1994 by this is a by Chen, no, not Chen.
No, large at all.
Large et al. So it's a Large et al. Has brought out this mixing parameterization KPP. So this is a very interesting paper, but here the parameterization of mixing is more of a simplified manner. First, what they assume is that the momentum flux within the ocean assumes the buoyancy flux assumes a profile of a cubic polynomial shape function. So based on which they develop the mixing coefficient within the ocean mixer layer. Okay, so this is a pre-assumption that they follow a cubic polynomial shape function. That is kind of a true if you look at the mixing coefficient within the ocean. The larger mixing coefficient develop as you go slightly below the surface, where the larger balance between the buoyancy and the local density stratification occurs. So there the mixing coefficients are relatively larger, and then mixing coefficients weakens below the mixer layer and then weakens further. So this cubic polynomial shape function is what the basic structure of the beginning of this KPP. Then as pre-assumption of this shape function then get modified by looking at how the momentum and buoyancy at a local place is happening. So there will be a vertical velocity scale. W star will be derived based upon the momentum and buoyancy fluxes, and this W star will get into the parameterization of fine tuning of this shape function. So they get a final profile of mixing coefficient. So this was a more of a diagnostic kind of concept than a energy balance model. Okay, so this is but this achieved a large success, because this become a uniform code where you can apply for the tropics as well as mid latitude and high latitude, where you have a mid latitude have large buoyancy related mixing and deep mixer layer. If you go to North Atlantic Ocean and all, mixer layer goes as deep as 1,000 meter, 1 kilometer deep mixing you see in the North Atlantic because of the larger cold water formation at the surface, and then it's a deep convective mixing. So such mixings Meller Yamada would not were not able to resolve successfully, but KPP were able to resolve. So it became a kind of a global general circulation scheme, mixing scheme developed in those time because it was uniform. It can be applied throughout the globe. So it became a kind of a favorable scheme for any general circulation model, the KPP scheme. Then KPP also got its own modification. And KPP not only considering the local buoyancy, momentum, and stratification balance and the mixing coefficient, but also it looks for the other unresolved process like internal wave breaking, salt fingering, double diffusive process, and another important is that non-local mixing. What is non-local mixing? That is important in the oceanography. Suppose if you look at if you are standing in a particular place in the ocean, the local momentum and buoyancy will generate a mixing property. However, within the ocean, the properties may be advecting or transferring from elsewhere to your local location. That cannot be represented by your buoyancy flux, but that can induce a mixing in the interior. So there need to be a non-local profile or non-local mixing property has to be incorporated in your position. That perhaps is the failure of Meller-Amada. We only look at your above the values above your head. We're looking at that momentum and buoyancy, it mixes the local water, but there is no non-local concept. There is no properties of mixing related properties advecting to a particular region through the interior of the ocean. That was not taken care in earlier model. But this non-local parameterization, in addition to the local momentum buoyancy force mixing, they also consider some non-locally existing mixing in a particular region by looking at how the tracer gradient is established across distances and how the tracer gradient can be, the density gradients accountable by the non-local processes can be incorporated into mixing. That they considered in the KPP. So that is why KPP non-local mixing parameterization, which is highly enjoyed in the, especially in the ocean model, although it is applicable also in the atmospheric boundary layer. This could be equally applied. Then comes the various versions of KPP like Piknosi-Philander scheme, but this is slightly different from KPP, but more of a Price et al. Scheme related Piknosi-Philander scheme. Then Chen et al. Has modified a hybrid scheme combining the essentials of Meller-Yamada, KPP, and various other schemes. They modified a Chen et al. Scheme, etc. got evolved, and I'm showing the history only up to 1995. But later on, mixing properties got evolved. But what we can see is even today, the general circulation models use on any some of these schemes only. For example, CFS V2, people are running climate coupled forecasting version 2, the heavily used in IITM. They use KPP model. So that means these models which is used today actually developed say 20, 30, 40 years ago, and there has not been a focused attempt to modify this mixing scheme since then, because models got more complicated and processes got more complicated, and people did not pay much attention to developing more and more mixing features. Even today, we are suffering for that because of that, right? If you know that CFS V2 has a cold bias, all you researchers of this institute knows that CFS has a cold bias, and why this is happening? See, cold bias means the surface cold bias they are talking about. Maybe the limitation of some of the mixing schemes used, especially the KPP is what used inside, and KPP what level of demerit it has in a coupled model, and all are not very heavily attempted in within the CFS framework. So what is interesting is that even today's general circulation model, when you talk about the mixing, you will see one of these names in this. That means it has been developed since a long time, and effort needs to be focused to improve those schemes for somebody's particular application. Okay, so this is kind of a mixer layer model, upper ocean mixer layer model evolution history. Then come to the second row of this slide, which is a reduced gravity model, isopycnal model. So this is also have a separate evolution as compared to the only mixer layer model. Here, when you come to reduced gravity model, it's become a 2D or 3D model. Okay, it's not anymore a one-dimensional. One-dimensional models are basically for the vertical processes of the upper ocean, but three-dimensional models are basically for the general circulation of the ocean. So it's the very beginning of reduced gravity model in our communities by J.J. O'Brien in Florida State University in in 1970s. They started develop the concept of these layered model. For example, you might have heard of the Redkey jet, right? Redkey jet is is discovered by the Redkey in 1965 or so, or 1970s. Maybe suppose it is, I think it's in 1970s or something. So immediately after Redkey identified this jet, then O'Brien, for example, applied this model to describe what is Redkey jet, how it can be forced with a semi-annual westerly wind component over the tropical Indian Ocean. So this model was suddenly applied to such a problem, and because they were enjoying the early success using such a simple models, the O'Brien and all. The J.J. O'Brien was a great fact professor, passed away in Florida State University, who pioneered this reduced gravity layered model concept in the world. Okay, so this is an started in 1970s O'Brien, and this model has been greatly enjoyed by Kane and Sebiak, Mark Kane and Sebiak. They have coupled this model with the atmospheric model and reproduced the coupled variability of El Nino, or reproduced perhaps the prediction of El Nino they have achieved using this kind of layered model. So that is happened in 1980s. And now later McCrary, if might have heard of this name, J.J. McCrary, it's a very senior person, very important, eminent personality in oceanography, especially Indian Ocean oceanography. They have achieved a great amount of success by studying the Indian Ocean using reduced gravity layered model. So McCrary has done a lot of classical works in the tropical Indian Ocean in early days, studying about the mean seasonal forcing, mean seasonal around circulation, the semi-annual mode circulation of the tropical Indian Ocean, wave propagation, Kelvin-Rossby waves, Redkey jets, etc., undercurrents, etc. They studied a great detail, McCrary, not only in the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean also they have studied. They simulated the El Ninos in the tropical Pacific using reduced gravity model, etc. So they achieved a great amount of success with a intermediate to complex concept of reduced gravity model or isopycnal models. Then this model has been further. This Jensen was a student of O'Brien and from that university. He has modified the layered gravity model into a general n.5 layer model. So our development of ODTM start with this paper particularly. So Jensen is a researcher in oceanography who has brought O'Brien's code and make it more generic code. I mean, you don't need to have a 2.5 layer or 3.5 layer stiff necked code, but you can have a n.5 layer code. With that, he has modified that equations. So this is from where the ODTM started developing, and then later Rekhu and Busalachi etc. has enjoyed this isopycnal model of O'Brien's group and all later, and they have also done, Rekhu has PhD itself was in this kind of modeling in early 1990s, and so they have enjoyed a great success in simulating the tropical phenomena using the reduced gravity model. They simulated El Nino, La Nina, Indonesian through flow, Indian Ocean variability, IOD related oceanic features, etc. And they added biogeochemistry in the model. They simulated chlorophyll and nutrient cycling, etc. They enjoyed in using that model in 2000. Then this model further got evolved into HYCOM and MICOM. HYCOM, maybe you might be heard of hybrid coordinate ocean model, which is even today Navy Physical Oceanography in US is using their state forecast of the coastal oceans and global in the regional oceans using HYCOM. HYCOM is a hybrid coordinate isopycnal and layered model coordinates concept. It has a fully general circulation model, state-of-the-art model. Then it got evolved into ROMS, regional ocean modeling system, Poseidon in France, for example. So ROMS people might be heard of. It's one of the today used state-of-the-art model of today. This all got evolved from that reduced gravity layered model or isopycnal model of the past. Okay, ROMS is now is a fully complex general circulation model available for regional oceanography study. INCOIS heavily uses ROMS for their research and state forecast, for example. HYCOM also used by INCOIS, and many other agencies use this kind of model. So if you look back in history, they got evolved in this lineage. Say, for example, started with the concept of reduced gravity, and as the computer capacity increased, the model got evolved, and what we see today has been emerged. Now, coming to the third row of another evolution of ocean models is that primitive equation ocean model. So, general circulation model. So, this is what actually happening here is in the earlier first row or second row are actually focusing on certain types of solutions in the ocean models. Okay, certain types of ocean circulation only they resolve. But primitive equation, however, means the solution to the complete geophysical fluid dynamic equation. equation. There is no filtering out, etc. provided. So primitive equation motion models are evolved in terms of an ocean general circulation model, or the familiar finite volume general circulation model of today got evolved even in the earlier days. Brian and Cox in 1970 started this concept, Brian-Cox model. This is a code in generated by Brian and Cox, how to solve the primitive. What are the primitive equation? The momentum equation, trace temperature equation, salinity equation, and mass conservation equation. So these fundamental equation they try to solve in every finite volume. So the entire global ocean is divided into a volume, a boxes of volumes, right? Finite volume of a definite grid, x degree, y degree, and z depth. So such finite volumes, they consider the mass flux entering through the left and right and top and bottom, north and south, and then they try to solve the center of the grid, the tendency of momentum, tendency of temperature, tendency of salinity, mass conservation, etc. They pressure gradient term, etc. Everything they calculate. This is a kind of primitive equation general circulation model concept, but it started in Brian and Cox in 1970s. Okay, it's not very new. Then Sempner and Chervin took taken this model into a next development. Then it came into MOM. You all know MOM, right? Modular ocean models actually started from Brian Cox 1970s code. Okay, that code finally evolved into MOM. MOM, everybody know MOM, modular ocean model. In IITM, it's heavily used in CFSV2. MOM is what is used in the ocean component, right? It is MOM. It got evolved in those days of Brian Cox model in the GFDL, Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory in Princeton University. They started, they were the pioneers of the general circulation model, primitive equation model. Then it got evolved into MOM, and later various versions of general circulation we have seen, MIT, GCM, NEMO, COCO. So there are so many models available now. Every nation, every developed nation has their own versions of Germany, France, Europe. They all go with the NEMO, European Consortium Model Effort is called NEMO, and UK Met Office has their own ocean model called GLOSY, and then MIT GCM by MIT, Princeton Ocean Model is there, MOM is there, and so many other models also there. So simple ocean data analysis, all those are developed based on MOM. Okay, it's actually MOM. They are called POP model, parallel ocean programming model code, which is actually evolved from MOM. So there are a lot of general circulation model built around this MOM and that concept. And now it is a wide array of general circulation model available for researchers. And this finally got evolved into ESM, Earth System Science Model, or Earth System Model, right? Earth System Model is a fully coupled ocean, atmosphere, land, biosphere, geosphere, everything involved, right? IITM has an Earth System Model. You all know that it has an atmosphere, it has an ocean, it has biochemistry, it has land, atmospheric chemistry, aerosol, land surface model. So many things are coupled together. So it finally got evolved into kind of an ESM concept. So this is kind of a single slide history discussion how the ocean models got evolved over the time from 1960 to today, as you see. But this slide kind of ends in early 2000. Okay, so what is today is that today the modeling world is going around with the CMIP6 type of model. What is CMIP? It is a coupled model intercomparison program, right? It is a global program under which the climate change has been monitored, right? For example, the assessment report AR4, AR5, AR6, etc. All these are the outcome of the coupled model intercomparison projects. It's a huge project in which 30 plus countries participated with their own model and with various versions of their own model, and they simulate the climate using certain prescribed scenarios. Say, for example, RCP 8.5. These are emission scenarios. How much carbon if we emit in next 100 years, what will happen to our climate? So they all have these ocean models and the mixing schemes and the parameterization which developed in the history is all incorporated in this kind of model. So nowadays we use ESM for such experiments. CMIP6 experiments are mostly participated by Earth System model. So IITM is participating using our own IITM Earth System model, and these Earth System models are high. That is the best computer code ever the human brains have made, you could say, in Earth science. Okay, ESMs are the best computer made human brains are ever made in the Earth system is the ESM model. So you could say that because it has a complicated nutrient cycle, land nutrient cycle, land ocean interaction, land river interaction, river ocean interaction, ocean atmospheric interaction, atmosphere geosphere interaction. So all these are high complex things are all coded in such these things. So human brains have created such a complex code so that we can mimic what we see around in the Earth system in a computer model, so that you can simulate what is going on around, right? So that will give you some idea how the climate is changing, etc. So to now, why I introduce such a elaborate introduction for the modeling thing is because people should know that so the real modeling is, what you mean by real modeling. Modeling is not just an exercise in the computer, especially young people. If they are listening to this, I always tell this message: it's not just an exercise in the computer using certain codes and analysis. Okay, it is rather than the deepest understanding how the geophysical principles are incorporated in it. This I've been telling this ever since when I started teaching to students. Okay, so this kind of thorough understanding what is going on inside the model is important, so that then only you will be able to contribute new modules into the model to improve certain things. Okay, so this the link between the history and the progress today has to be maintained, and students has to study from that basic to today's state of the art. So no, don't just go to the state of the art and just stay there, because then when many of this basic information you will lost. Okay, how the fundamentally model is constructed, what are the basic principles of numerical modeling, what are conserved there, how mass is conserved, how energy is conserved, how momentum is conserved, etc. You have to how vorticity is conserved, for example. So all these basic concepts has to be there. Now I'm not going further into that. Let us move on to the next slide. But now let us come back to today's workshop's theme, that is, what is a reduced gravity model and how it works. So I've been telling a lot about reduced gravity. Reduced gravity, we need to reduce the gravity. So gravity is what it is, around 10 meter per second square, or 9.8 meter per second square. That means every second the velocity get increased by 10 units, right? That is a huge. That means if you drop a stone from a top of a building, you see how quickly it get accelerated and falls. So what happens in the ocean? Suppose the ocean water tries to rise up due to some converging motion, the gravity immediately pulls it down. So okay, so this upward down and this downward pulling and upward resistance of the water is actually creating certain waves in the ocean. That waves will move horizontally. So that is the kind of thing happening in the ocean, right? So ocean is highly mobile. For example, ocean is forced in the atmosphere by the wind. The wind strongly stress the water. It tries to push the water to one side, then the water get accumulate there. Then what happens? The gravity tries to pull it back to normal potential. Then because of that competition, there will be waves. I'm not talking about the waves in that you see in the beach. That is also a part of it, but that they are deep water waves. But rather we are study about is the shallow water wave. Okay, well, people may get confused that I talk about beach, but I said a deep water wave, and then I talk about a large ocean and talk about a shallow water wave, because that paradox exists. The deep water waves is what you see in the beach. Okay, they are such what why we call deep water, because they are surface wave which does not feel the depth of the ocean. So that's why we call it deep water waves. But the shallow water waves is a long wave, it's a global ocean wave. It is not, but it feels the depth of the ocean. So that's why we call it a shallow water wave. Okay, so basically in a reduced gravity model, what we are trying to solve is the shallow water wave equation. Now in the geophysical fluid principle, we restrict ourselves into discussion of the shallow water wave, because these are the slowly varying wave which consider the entire depth of the ocean, for example, and transfer the heat and traces of the ocean into large distances, basically heat. So when heat is transported at large distances, it can force the atmosphere, then atmosphere will develop as a wind, and then wind will force the ocean, etc. So that is why we are interested in the shallow water wave. Now how we can build a reduced gravity principle in a shallow water wave equation is what shown here. So basically the reduced gravity model consists of few layers. First we divide the entire ocean into few layers. So layer 1 with the thickness h1 and density u1 and velocity v1 and u1 and v1. Okay, and the second layer has a thickness h2, density rho2, velocity u2 and velocity v2. U and v are zonal and meridional velocities. And layer 3 and layer 4 and bottom layer, you can show this as the mountain, because ocean has a ocean relief or topography, which is the constant, which does not evolve with time, right? It is a mountain, it's a land surface, it's a land feature. So it is a hb is the bottom, which is actually offering a wave type of a dynamics or wave type of solution in the equation. Now what are other other terms considered here are eta. Eta is nothing but the free surface elevation. So by looking at this simple schematic, you can understand at any given time t, eta will be a function of the entire depth of the water column and also the convergence and divergence of the water in each of these layers. So each of these layer water can converge or diverge only along that layer, which can create a eta, net eta at a given particular time. Okay, so eta is a function of entire depth of the water column. So that is actually the most problematic term in any ocean modeling. Okay, because eta is the depth of the entire water column. That means the wave concerning or governing eta will travel at a speed square root of gh. So g means the gravity, h is the height of the fluid. Suppose if you have a 4 kilometer deep ocean, square root of gh means 10 into 4 kilometer, which means 4,000 square root, which will become 200. Sorry, 40,000 square root, which become 200 meter per second. So 200 meter per second is like as fast as a sound wave, right? Such as a very fast gravity wave. So to solve that gravity wave, you might need to have a very low time step in your numerical simulation, which is not possible. So you need to somehow deal with this eta term in any model, right? In whether it is a general circulation model or a reduced gravity model or any type of model. So that is what eta means. And what is h1? It is nothing but the instantaneous interface deviation. Suppose if that initially it was a level surface, after some time of mass converging towards this particular zone, mass converging towards this particular zone, there will be a downward motion of h1, and which is we call that as interfacial deviation. And then there is an interface h2 has go up and down, and h3. So you can see there is a reciprocal relationship. For example, the mass is converging on the top, equivalent mass may diverge from the bottom. So this layer gets squeezed and this layer get thickened, and the bottom layer also go. Though this kind of adjustment you can ask, but not necessarily. Sometimes mass can converge in both layer 1 and layer 2 and diverge from layer 3 and layer 4. It's also possible. So this is the kind of geometry of the model. Now what is important is I have indicated positions a1, a2, a3 and a4 at the interface. Now what is actually happening? Let us take for example a2. This a2 part of the water column experiences two pressure. What is the overhead pressure from a1 to a2, which is acting downward, and there is a pressure from the bottom. Bottom is not a stiff boundary, it is a dynamic boundary. So there is a pressure from the bottom also. So at any given a2, there position a2, at any given time there will be two contrasting pressure experiencing at the point a2, which will define the net pressure experiencing over a2. So that pressure calculation is important because this is the overhead pressure subtracted by the pressure going above. So because they are in the opposite direction. So that's the basic concept of pressure at any given location. So to understand this pressure is the essence of any reduced gravity model. Why pressure is important? Because pressure generate pressure gradient. So pressure gradient is the largest geostrophic tendency of geostrophic flow tendency that one may generate using the pressure gradient. Okay, so pressure gradient calculation is so critical in this in any model, for example. So this is a basic structure of a reduced gravity model. Now coming next further, the key ingredient of reduced gravity models are the calculation of depth integrated layer of pressure. So we have to calculate the depth integrated layer of pressure. So let us go with the A1, A2, A3, A4. What is the pressure felt at the A1? It is nothing but the H1 is the free surface. So the initial layer thickness plus eta into ρ1 g plus atmospheric inverted barometric pressure is what felt there, which we tend to ignore because inverted barometric pressure pre-atmosphere tend to be smaller as compared to oceanic pressure alone, with due to because dynamic pressure may increases, or the one decimeter is equal to 1 atmospheric. If you travel 100 meter in the ocean, you already experience 1 atmospheric pressure over your shoulder, right? So that is why we don't consider atmospheric pressure here, because it is very small compared to the oceanic pressure. Now coming to point at 2 means where at this A2. If you consider A2, what are the pressure happening there? This is the pressure, the layer above, and this is the pressure layer below. Okay, so if you expand this, you will see that this pressure is acting this direction, the bottom pressure is acting upward direction. So this is the total pressure felt at P2A, and this can be continued. This is the total pressure felt at P3A. So when you consider that bottom pressure, you will also have a pressure from the bottom topography, right? So that also will come to somehow kind of incorporated here. Not in P3 if it is in P4, right? In case of our figure, it should be in P4, but for generalizing it, I already shown the bottom pressure HB, I mean bottom topography HB here itself. So these are the P1 or P2 or P3 are the pressure experienced at any particular level. So let us, for generalizing it, let us consider the P2A or P3A as the pressure. Now, what is the pressure gradient? If P3A is the pressure at any given point A3, what is the gradient of pressure? I mean pressure at A3 minus pressure at say B3 and another distant point. Okay, so that pressure gradient is important because in geophysical, I mean Navier-Stokes equation, the pressure gradient is what generating the tendency for the motion. So pressure gradient we will consider. So if you take the pressure gradient, you take the derivative of P3 with respect to distance, which is x, then you get a term rho1 g dou eta by dou x and rho1 g dou h1 by dou x. H1 is the interfacial thickness or interfacial deviation, and rho2 g dou h1 by dou x and rho2 g minus rho2 g dou h2 by dou x, and plus like that you can expand. Okay, you take the gradient of the P3A. Now if you now proceeding this way, you can generalize. This is for the third layer. Suppose there is an nth layer, what will be the combination of this term? That can be generalized in this equation. That means in a kth layer, the pressure gradient must be equal to rho kg dou eta by dou x minus sigma I to k minus nth layer rho k minus rho I. This rho k means the density of each layer minus rho I into the rho I means that particular layer into g into dou h by dou x. So h is the total thickness of the fluid. Okay, it's not the interfacial distance anymore because we simplified them the interfacial distance into in terms of total thickness, which that is what easy to trace. Now h1 and capital H1, capital H2, capital H3. It's easy to trace. That's the total thickness of each layer. So we converted the equation into total thickness layer, total thickness and its deviation, and so at any layer k, the pressure gradient felt will be the summation of an interfacial pressure minus the pressure felt from below. So that is what this total terms going to tell us. So the first term in the RHS is a free surface height term. This is a free surface height term and governs the barotropic mode. So what is a barotropic mode? As I said, if you look at this picture, the free surface eta is, or at any given time, is a function of entire depth of the fluid, right? The entire depth of the fluid mass convergence and divergence will contribute to eta. So that means eta is a mode which feel the entire depth of the ocean. So in the shallow water theory, such waves will have a speed of square root of g to the gh. Square root of gh. G is the acceleration due to gravity. H is the thickness of the fluid. What is the entire thickness of the ocean? 4 kilometers. So if you substitute 4 kilometer times h, sorry, times g, if you take the square root, you get around 200 meter per second. That like a sound wave kind of speed, which is of not very important to our concern because this is a very fast moving wave, right? So we want to filter it out. It also create a computational problem. So the first term in RHS is a free surface height term and governs the barotropic mode. Now, the very basic, this is what the reduced gravity principle comes. The very basic principle of reduced gravity model is to layer is at rest. I started explaining this model saying that what is the half layer? N and half layer means the last layer, which is a quiescent layer, which is an infinitely deep layer, which is a motionless layer. That means the bottom layer you are keeping at rest. That means your bottom topography now you cannot feel anymore because the bottom layer is not moving. So the bottom topography is not felt to the rest of the ocean. So the HB term and the bottom pressure layer term disappear. So what happens? So what actually brings you what actually give you by these assumptions? The bottom layer is at rest means the pressure gradient of the nth layer, which is the last layer, must vanish. So this is the assumption, right? So partial P by partial of nth layer which is equal to 0. That means if you put n here and substitute n everywhere, then that term becomes 0. Doing so, that means the gradient of partial p by partial of nth layer is equal to 0 means if you put that condition in equation 12, you get a condition for free surface term in terms of the intermediate, in terms of the layers of the model with a gravity g, however scaled down by rho n minus rho I by rho n. So you see that suppose g is equal to 10, what is the rho n minus rho I? It is the density gradient between two layers. Usually density gradient between two layers is as low as 0.001 in the ocean. Density slowly only varies with the depth. Okay, if you take layer minus layer difference of density, I'm talking about the potential density. Okay, so density differences will be of this magnitude. Now if you substitute this scaling factor, but this is the rho n is the total density, so rho n minus rho I will be very small as compared to rho n. That means this fraction will go up to 0.001 or something. If you multiply that with g, it assumes that the g, the gravity terms has been reduced. That's the term we call reduced gravity. Right, the term reduced gravity means our gravity is reduced. So the bottom pressure now is, or bottom contribution to the free surface elevation by the entire depth of the ocean is now replaced in terms of a reduced gravity term. Now it is easy to solve. If you coming back to the equation 12, you can substitute this dou eta by dou x using this. If you substitute it here, now the pressure gradient at any layer C is actually the free surface elevation term contributed by the density gradient, which is easy to calculate and which is also very weak, and the density, the pressure due to the layer thickness convergence and divergence, which is also coming here. So now the total pressure gradient at any given level it has arrived in terms of the interfacial density and thicknesses. So that means in this assumption, the bottom layer is not moving. That means we filtered out the barotropic mode. So we don't have any barotropic mode. We only have a baroclinic mode, which is of a very low way moving. The baroclinic speed of the ocean is basically your g is now reduced to rho n minus rho I by rho n into g. So this is your new g. We call it g dash. So take the velocity of the wave as g dash h, square root of g dash h. G dash is a very, very low weak quantity, 0.001. Now if you take the square root of g dash h, suppose h be the thermocline height, say 200 meter, you get a wave of speed 1 to 4 or 1 to 3 meter per second, which is a very slow moving planetary wave speed. Okay, that is a basic concern of our solution. I mean, that is what we are basically interested to solve: slow moving, slow moving very large waves with a speed of 1 to 2 or to 3 meter per second, says a Kelvin wave or Rossby wave, mixed Rossby gravity waves, etc. All are governed by such a baroclinic speed. So that is how the layered model is coming. So every modeling has a concept. The basic concept is that you put the bottom layer to rest and make it infinitely deep. So you will filter out the barotropic mode. At the expense of that, what you get is that a term which can be simplified, which can be utilized to simplify or calculate the free surface elevation in terms of the reduced gravity. So if you apply this, you get a reduced gravity pressure gradient term. So this is the basic concept of a reduced gravity model, which is also used in ODTM. So the reduced gravity model has its own advantages and limitations. So the advantages that it is amazingly simple but surprisingly accurate in rendering the dynamics. Barotropic modes are filtered out and only the dynamics of interest under dominant baroclinic modes are resolved. Now, there are certain disadvantages that density of each thick layer is a constant. It's a kind of a pre-assumption. They assumed that density is a constant, right? So in each layer, density cannot change, which is a kind of a not a good assumption, because density has not a stepwise function. Rather, it is a continuous function in the ocean. So, but here we assumed that it's a stepwise function. Each layer has its own density. Okay. And another disadvantage is that it does not account for horizontal gradient in pressure due to dynamic height. That is one major problem, because the expansion or contraction of water column due to density differences are ignored in such type of reduced gravity model. So these are the certain advantages and disadvantages. But the most interesting is that it is amazingly simple but surprisingly accurate in rendering the ocean dynamics. That is why it's very important. Now, reduced gravity. Now, there are various modification to reduced gravity model has introduced by various researchers in the past. Say, for example, several studies by Mark Kane, McCreary, Jensen, Q et al., Liu and McCreary, and many added a temperature and salinity term to each of these layers. So they calculate, instead of rho 1 and rho 2, they calculate an in situ density by T1 and S1. They assume the T1 and S1 of this layer is a constant. It is not varying. Okay, it may horizontally vary, but the within this layer there will be one temperature and one salinity, and within next layer there will be one temperature and one salinity. Horizontally they may vary, but at any given location a layer will have a uniform temperature and salinity. So they have added T1 S1, T2 S2, T3 S3. They make it a thermodynamic dynamic model. You kind of definitely an ODTM type of concept they already made during those days itself. In McCreary's 1990s papers, many papers are based on this reduced gravity dynamic thermodynamic model. However, the assumption is that T and S are constant within each thick layer. Now, processes other than ocean dynamics, such as seasonal surface mixing, etc., are crudely represented in this type of model. They assume that the first layer composed of two parts. One is a mixer layer, and beneath the mixer layer is called a fossil layer, and these mixer layer and fossil layer are entombed in the first layer. That kind of concept they utilized in those type of models. Okay, that means there is no detailing of how the mixer layer or within the mixer layer how the properties are varying, etc. They are not considering in detail. So that is the earlier adaptation of this ocean dynamic thermodynamic concept. Now, however, recently we have introduced a new concept in the layered model with considering a very high resolution or fine details of vertical mixing in the upper few meters of the ocean. Here, the vertical mixing is not restricted within the layer 1 or 2 or 3. Rather, it can mix up to the height it is balanced, up to the height at which the surface buoyancy forcing is balancing the local density gradient. So it is allowed to mix up to the height where the balance is matched. So this is a concept we introduced in ODTM. So introducing the thermodynamic term to reduced gravity model design of ODTM. So this is how we have crafted our ODTM. So we have definite layers: layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, and layer 5, and within which we have incorporated a fine vertical mixer layer model, which is shown as a railway network line here. You see here. So dynamic core is the same as in earlier model, but modified with the thermodynamic terms. It also incorporates a fine vertical mixing module, parameterized first few layers at a very high resolution. So we calculate a mixing in a separate grid, and whatever mixing it has found, the tendency of temperature due to changes in mixing will be added to back to the individual layer where it is belong to. So this is a new concept. Actually, we actually constructed a fine vertical mixing module within the layered gravity at each grid point. This is kind of a ODTM schematic. So what are other terms here? T1, it has each layer will have its own temperature, like in McCreary's model. T2 and T3 and T4 and T5. Also salinity. Okay, S1, S2, S3, F4. T represents the tracer here, and U1, V2, V3, V4, E5 represents the velocities, horizontal velocities, whether it can be horizontal velocity or a meridional velocity, and it has initial thickness of H1, H2, instantaneous thickness H1, H2, H3, H4, and H5, and it has a kind of a minimum thickness is maintained. That means these two layers are not the one layer should not skews below a level it disappear. It cannot allow in the reduced gravity model. So we need to allow certain minimum thickness. Also, once the minimum thickness is achieved, the water from below is allowed to enter into the water of above to the layer above. Okay, the water is allowed to entrain once the minimum thickness is when the minimum thickness is reached for a particular layer, a gate is open so that water will freely flow. So once water flow, what will happen? The layer will not thin. The layer will not thin anymore, right? It gets more mass. It kind of gets stagnant. So that's the principle of entrainment applied here. So this is a basic construction of ocean dynamic thermodynamic model. Now, as I said earlier, this dynamic height is not available in a reduced gravity model. So we have also introduced a term for dynamic height. What is dynamic height? You all know that from the pressure. Yes.
Yeah, can I ask one question here? So
Where?
In the previous slide, that T is varying zonally, or it is like fixed, it will be fixed here.
It's zonally, it's varying. So horizontally they vary, obviously.
And this is a like this will be 3D structure only, right?
No. This is wiggling. The layers are wiggling up and down, and the temperature and salinity vary horizontally at each grid point. They are not fixed.
Like in the previous version that you were showing, that there you mentioned that T is fixed here, right? Here the
T is
T.
fixed within this layer at a grid point, but one grid point to the next grid point T varies.
Okay, so
Ah,
this is the typical 3D structure like X, Y, and X, Y,
yes,
and
yes,
Z.
yes. It's a typical 3D structure. Yes.
Okay, okay,
Temperature horizontally vary, but at a particular point T and S are fixed.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So now, by doing so, this kind of crafting, what we get is a freedom to calculate a dynamic height. What is a dynamic height in the ocean? Dynamic height is nothing but due to the density differences, a per parcel or water can expand or contract. Okay. So why the parcel expands? Because if temperature increases, the water expands, and the temperature decreases, water contracts. So does the salinity. If salinity decreases, water expand, and salinity increases, water contracts. So this expansion and contraction of water due to density differences was not provided in the earlier dynamic model, but now we are able to calculate. So our total pressure gradient, so which was shown here, our total pressure gradient of in this form is now changed to a free surface term, a overhead pressure term, and a dynamic height term. So this is nothing but the gradient density at each play. I mean the pressure due to the gradient in the pressure contributed by the dynamic height. So H into density gives kind of a height. Na? So this is a density difference or the gradient of density with the depth scaled by the density of that layer multiplied by H. So that much expansion of water or contraction of water has happened due to density deviation. So that adds a dynamic height term which is added to the pressure gradient term. So this red box indicates a new term contributed by ODTM to the total pressure. Now, but however, this has a serious assumption. The assumption is that the density of k minus 1 divided by density of k. This is k means the layer number of layer. Okay, so the gradient of density between each layer is approximately equal to 1. That means the density gradient should be extremely weak, which with the depth. That is true. I mean, in the ocean, this is not a very strong violation. With this assumption, we can arrive the pressure gradient is a combination of free surface term, overhead pressure term, and a dynamic height term. Now, the density at each layer is calculated as a linear equation. This is the alpha is the expansion of density of water due to temperature, and beta is also the salinity expansion of those. So temperature expansion and salinity expansion is a linear state equation of the density. So this is the basic structure of ODTM. So we are talking only about the pressure gradient term because this is the most important term which is inherent to the structure of the model. The other terms like Coriolis term and the frictional term, momentum, horizontal advection, non-linear advection, those all are pure fluid dynamics terms. That is independent of model structure to model structure. So what is important is how you calculate the vertical pressure and its gradient. So that is the major concern. So that is how the ODTM it is constructed in this combination of these three terms. Okay, there is a free surface term, overhead pressure term, and a dynamic height term. So this is the total pressure gradient. Now ODTM flowchart is like basically it has a dynamic model. The dynamic model calculates the horizontal advection, etc., and then there is a thermodynamic model which the horizontal advection will advect the thermodynamic term, which is temperature and salinity. Then there is a mixing module. The mixing module is shown here. So the model mix within this mixing module has a different grid structure as compared to the dynamic model. Okay, so the mixing module happens in a very small in this very high resolution grid. It mixes, and after completing the mixing, the tendency of temperature due to mixing is feedback to the background layer. That's how it is working. So this is as a physical core, and after doing this dynamic model, thermodynamic model, and physical mixing, they are coupled and then feedback to the thermodynamic model. So this is the kind of a flow chart of ODTM. So the vertical mixing coefficient is resolved is somewhere with this shape. I am going to explain how this shape is achieved and what is the mixer layer mode scheme we are using in here. So the advantage and difference compared to the earlier version of reduced gravity model and ODTM is that here it has a very fine vertical mixing within a layer. Okay, so this mixing is happening in a separate grid. After mixing complete, we couple it to the major grid, and this background grid will advect these coupled. So these mixer layer grids in a horizontal fashion. So there are coupling. These couplings are achieved in the coupler basically. Basically, the dynamic model and the mixer layer model are coupled at every time or every alternative time step. Okay, so this is a coupling. This is the flow chart of the ODTM. And now, what are the important parts here? Reduced gravity model, mixer layer model, and its coupling and etc. are shown in the schematic. Now, these are the complete equations of ODTM. So first, let us consider the tracer, which means the layer averaged temperature Tk and Sk of each layer, and mixer there are which is Tk and Sk, and mixer layer has temperature Tm and Sm. So Tm and Sm are high resolution, this grid, okay, red color grid, and Tk and Sk are low vertical resolution, the layer grid. Okay, so there are two different grids. Now the tendency of layer averaged temperature is changed by its own advection, diffusion, and temperature tendency due to the temperature changes by mixing, Tm. So Tm grid will have an averaged density. I mean, you can average the mixing grids within this layer. You get a T dash. That T prime can be added back to the background. That will contribute to the contribution of mixing to the background, right? That is the term called alpha Tm by Tt. So this is the tendency of temperature average. There's an over bar there, T prime M bar. Okay, this represents the tendency of mixing in a particular time step, averaged over the layer height of Tk, added to the model by alpha. Alpha is the coupling parameter. If alpha is switched to 0, what happens? This will not couple. Okay, so alpha is a coupling parameter. Now the temperature of the mixer layer model, that means the Tm, however, will have a tendency, Tm advects using the background current Uk. Uk means the current of the this thick layer. Okay, this thick layer horizontally advects the mixer layer temperature across the grid to grid. This grid to the next grid, they will get advected. That is coupling with a term beta. So beta, if you switched off 0, they are not interacting. Okay, and then it has a diffusion term by dou c kh dot Tm by dou c, where k is the mixing coefficient. Okay, this is resolved by Meller-Amada level 2 turbulent closure model. Plus, there is an entrainment term, because within this mixer layer, due to the layer, the layer converges and diverges, which induces an upward and downward velocity within each, right? So you can calculate at the interfaces what are the upward and downward velocity, which you can use to interpolate a velocity profile, which can use to vertically advect the water within the mixer layer. You can call it as an entrainment term. So that entrainment term, WEM, is the velocity profile in vertical direction at the M grid, with is coupled with gamma with an advection, vertical advection of the temperature. So this gamma again become a coupling parameter for entrainment. Now this is the sunlight parameterization, right? Incident light at the surface minus incident light at the any level divided by d0 OMCP epsilon. This is kind of a light penetration term, and this term KHTM by TZ, this one KHTM by DC, will have a boundary condition at surface, which is the heat flux term Q by dou 0 Cp or E minus P SRF by rho m if it is a temperature or salinity. T represent tracer. It can be temperature or it can be salinity according to this boundary condition. Now this epsilon is keep 1 for temperature and 0 for salinity. So this term will not operate for salinity. Okay. So these box terms represents the coupling term. The coupler actually happens here. The dynamic model, thermodynamic model, and physical core has to couple properly. So then only they will interact. So that coupling is achieved by alpha, beta, and gamma. These three are major coupling term in the. So if you switch off this alpha, beta, and gamma, they become standalone independent model. They don't interact each other. Okay. Now, what are the momentum coupling? Momentum equation. Now, momentum equation also has four components: UK VK, which is the layer averaged zonal and meridional velocity, and a mixed layer model velocity UM and VM. Now, the layer averaged zonal or meridional velocity has a tendency due to advection, mixing, or horizontal diffusion, and pressure gradient term, which we already discussed, right? It has a free surface term, interfacial term, and dynamic height term, and omega cross U, which is the Coriolis term, and wind stress. Wind has to force the model. The model wind forcing is given here, and the tendency of momentum due to mixing. So UM is the mixer layer grid. So U bar is the layer averaged changes in UM due to mixing prime, right? With the dou UM by dou T at any grid IJ with the alpha coupling term. Alpha is the coupling term. So if alpha switch off to 0 means the momentum exchange due to mixing is not incorporated into the major background layer. Now, what is the tendency of the mixer layer model velocities? Mixer layer model will have a velocity, because if you force the mixer layer model with the wind stress, it will develop an Ekman spiral. We all know that, right? Which will create a velocity within each grid. So that velocity is evolved basically based upon the mixing, which is dou c by dou k, dou by dou c km dou um by dou c. This is the vertical mixing of the momentum, and it is advected across using the layer averaged velocity. So the velocity in the mixer layer model are advected across by a beta coupling. So there is another coupling called beta here. Now, and then there's a mixing here, and there's an entrainment of momentum within the mixer layer module. So what is a mixer layer module? This is a mixer layer module where momentum can be entrained up and down. So that is calculated by this gamma W velocity profile into dou m by dou c, and then Coriolis term will be there because you need to have an Ekman layer, right? Or Ekman spiral. Now, the boundary condition for momentum mixing is at surface, there should be a wind stress forcing for the mixing. Now, this is this equation 7 is the mass conservation. At each layer, the tendency of the layer thickness will be the horizontal divergence of mass with the entrainment and detrainment. What is entrainment, detrainment? If you remember, I explained here, if the layer thickness goes below a limit, what happens? The mass from subsurface will entrain to the surface. Otherwise, the layer will disappear. We cannot allow the layer to disappear in this model. It will be what is called, it will not give any realistic solution, right? So we cannot let the layer disappear. Layer has to be maintained. So if the layer thinning and thinning and thinning below a limit, then you bring some water from subsurface to surface. This is called entrainment terms. Okay, so which is provided as a mass conservation term. So which is entrainment of the layer below minus entrainment of the layer above. Okay, so that is the mass conservation equation. Now the entrainment is calculated by a simplified parameterization, looking at the thickness of the instantaneous thickness minus a preset minimum thickness divided by the minimum thickness into tau e. Tau e is a time step which can be per day or per half a day. You can set into into theta. Theta is a step function. If it is equal to 1, if this satisfies, if it is equal to 0, satisfies the other condition. So this is the entrainment velocity calculating function. And this entrainment velocity at the interfaces are used to provide with a profile velocity for mixer layer entrainment. Okay, so that is what I am trying to show here. So at any given instant, if you look at the thick layer, they either converge or diverge. So at the interface, you get a WE calculation by the mass conservation principle. So WE at a kth layer can be calculated by this way: convergence and divergence, or the additional entrainment provided by here, which gives you the boundary condition at the interfaces. So that boundary conditions can be utilized to interpolate a profile of WM. Okay, so this boundary condition kind of provide an inflection point. So between this inflection point, you can linearly interpolate a velocity profile WEM, and this WEM is used to entrain the water up and down. So that is kind of a treatment we used in this particular model. So the vertical velocity is calculated from convergence divergence of the layers interpolated to mixer layer model grid at each time step, implying a baroclinic mode in WE. Okay, so this is a treatment of entrainment velocity, confluence of interface undulations and baroclinic inflections we incorporated. Well, if you have these many things, then you can you can say the this ODTM is done. However, there is the story is not complete, because ODTM, what is the mixer layer model we used? We need to also study about that. So the mixer layer model is a level 2 turbulent closure model. So ODTM has a Miller-Yamada level 2 mixer layer scheme of taken from Ikeda 1992. Then mixer layer model has a very fine resolution of 5-meter thickness. We are talking about the red module here, okay? 5-meter thickness up to 255-meter of the upper ocean. So this is fixed. Up to 255-meter, the mixer layer grid operates, okay? At each time step, the tendency due to mixing, both tracer and momentum, are updated to dynamic model. Large scale dynamics advex the mixer layer grids across, okay, horizontally. Now this is the kind of a treatment. Now what is the mixer layer scheme we used? The Miller-Yamada model says that the mixing coefficient Km, momentum mixing coefficient or tracer mixing coefficient, is multiple of TKE or square root of TKE, and mixing length L and the stability parameter Sm. So square of TKE is B1. This is a parameterized preset thing. So it's basically the shear into 1 by Richardson flux Richardson number, and then the mixing stability factor Sm is defined by this, and Sh is this, and mixing length is nothing but it has to be iterative or asymptotically find. L0 is an asymptotic length scale which has to be found iteratively, which is kz by 1 kappa z by 1 plus kappa z by L0 is the mixing length. So if you get L, Sm and Q, you can substitute here, you get a mixing coefficient KH and K. So this is a level 2 model, assuming that the TKE and buoyancy production is in balance with the dissipation, okay? The total production fluxes and kinetic energy fluxes are balanced with the dissipation. That means there is no tendency towards the Q term. Q is not horizontally advected or prognostically evolved. Q is calculated diagnostically. That's why we call it level 2. If you advect and make it prognostic, it will become level 2.5 turbulent closure model. Okay, so now what are the rest of the details? So these are the basic idea about the construction of the model and all. Then this is the design, how it is designed, how it is crafted, and etc. Now in the next lecture they will tell you about what program they used and how that is design of grids, etc. I think they will teach in the next lecture. So are we stopping here, or up to what time is this workshop?
Actually, we were supposed to stop at 12.
Yeah, this is 12 now, already 12
yes,
now.
Yes, almost.
Yeah, so I think that is fine. This is what I need to give. The rest of it, application and all, is not important at the moment. So I think I covered most of the design and the validation. Sorry, design of the model. And now we have simulated this model for Indian Ocean. The results are available in a couple of papers. People can find.
Maybe we can discuss this in the next session as well. Just
Yeah,
the initial
right.
part. Yes.
Yeah, right. I think that is fine. So I think that is good enough introduction for people who are not familiar with this model. So next class we'll start to get the code and port it and etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you have any doubts, we can discuss.
We know.
Mm.
So what is the additional advantage of this model? Like we are incorporating mixing in the upper ocean.
Yeah.
But like what is the real bias status compared to other state of art models, right? Like right now.
Yeah, to answer that, we need to go to the results. For example, the vertical section, how it is simulated, and how the structure is maintained. Bias. This is a correlation with the hard ISST and ODTM, and this is the sea surface height. Biases are here. For example, the correlation with the sea surface height is not very well in some regions, but especially in Eastern Indian Ocean and this Seychelles, Chagos region and West Bengal are good. But some regions there are biases in the sea surface height, 18-year correlations, and there are occasional biases there. This is a correlation of Bay of Bengal sea surface height and model and observation. So this is what you see, that correlation between SST. This SST correlation are relatively better, but sea surface height correlations are not very good, especially in the central region. So it's a one key discussion. The mesoscale has to be improved in the model, for example. And this is the mixer layer depth of the model. So this is January, February, March, April. May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. The contour is the observation, shade is the model. There are biases. For example, 40 meter you see here, but model shows that to 60 meter. So some deep mixing happens even in Bay of Bengal. But some other feature like very shallow mixing during the summer, during the rainy season in the North Bay of Bengal, and deep mixing in the south, which is kind of captured well in the model. And if you look at the mixing coefficient at the various parts in Bay of Bengal, like black and blue, red, orange, this is the profile of vertic mixing coefficient at each this artificial buoy location. Say for example, you see that mixing coefficient is shown in a unit of centimeter square per second in Millaremada. A very weak mixing coefficient during JJS in the center in the North Bay of Bengal. You see that, but if you take the southern part, deep mixing you see in the summer season, which is kind of true for Bay of Bengal. If you took horizontally like this green, black, and blue dots, which is green, black, and blue, the vertical section, this is a vertical, okay, from surface to 120
Yes.
meter. The mixing coefficients are stronger in the west, in the east, in the blue region, and weaker in the green and but this is the center. This is a kind of this mixing coefficient is kind of okay, agreeable. 80 to 60, 60 to 100 centimeter per second is kind of admissible range. Well, biases are apparent. I cannot say the biases. And then barrier layer. We all know that there is a barrier layer formation in the Bay of Bengal. And how the barrier layer is nothing but the layer between isothermal layer and the mixer layer. Mixer layer can be different from isothermal layer due to sudden stratification of increased precipitation or river runoff. So this is the barrier layer of the ODTM and observation comparison. We have a barrier layer as thick as 10, 15 to 20, and there is a more barrier layer in the east part where it's like 20, 25 meter. There are also biases. For example, more thick barrier layer seen in the JJA, but we get in a SON season in the Bay of Bengal East region. So, well, there are all advantages and disadvantages are there. If you go to, this is a result I'm not discussing, but if you go to Arabian Sea, this is the structure of currents. This is another paper we have written. So this is the soda current in the left panel and ODTM current in the right panel. This is for January, and this is for the top panel shows for January. This is a layer averaged currents for 3 layer from soda. Clearly shows the north monsoon jet and going to the coastal current, so which is kind of also reasonably coming well in the model. And western boundary, and then July, if you take this Great Pearl and Southern Gyre, these are major currents in the Western Arabian Sea, which also kind of reasonably coming in the model. Then validation of also here biases are there. For example, this is a salinity structure. Salinity and temperature reasonably matches. And this is a correlation of SST, ODTM, and observation. 0.5 correlation we get for 60 years, so it's not very bad. And this is again the MLD comparison. So there is a overestimation of 10 to 15 meter MLD is seen in the model. This is a soda and ODTM correlation for 60 years. You see that MLD of soda is correlated reasonably well with the ODTM, especially in the entire part of the basin, except in the western part. So it's a very nice correlation in between MLD and observatory analysis. And so biases are there. You can see these white areas can be called as biases, for example, because they don't represent well. And this is the kind of first EOF of 60-year EOF of mixer layer by model and soda. So soda has a basin wide mode, but model has a basin wide but more for concentric on the central Arabian Sea. Variability, we are talking about, this is the first EOF, okay, the EOF and PC comparison. But PC of soda and ODTM compares at a very good correlation of 0.40 in a very long time scale from 1950 to 2009. So that's a very good correlation. So apparently biases are there. So if you ask what is the advantage, advantage is that here this model now it is easy to craft in any manner, because for example now if you want to add biochemistry, which is what Anju has done, you go back to this equation, we know the in and out of the model, so you can add more equations for here the biogeochemistry. You can here it is tracer. So tracer 1 and 2 is temperature, salinity. 3, 4, 5, 6 can be any tracer like nitrate, nutrient, phytoplankton, zooplankton, which Anju has already incorporated NEMRO in this fashion into the model. So if we have this model, that's the advantage. We can design more and more as per our research, do more focused research, and we will have complete control on the code. We know what actually happens where, at least we claim. So we have that control in the code. If you do this, that is kind of one advantage in doing this type of research and development. We can convert this model into our application. Suppose if you take MOM has a biochemistry called Topaz. Then that's it, the end of it. We have no idea how to modify it. Or we can modify if you thoroughly work on it for 2 years, and then you can go to the code level modification. But again, it is not very free for us to incorporate a new mechanism or a new species or a new biochemistry into it. It will be restricted. But here we are much more free to do. If you have a dynamic thermodynamic model, and you can implement more biochemistry. Fishery, for example, we can add here as an additional module. Those are the advantages of this having ODTM. Well, one could argue that state-of-the-art models are there, then why you need this? But there are two advantages and disadvantages are two different manner. One is advantage is that because it's our own model, we know we can further develop for a particular research purpose easily. But if you depend on a foreign model, our development will be limited, but more application we can do with the existing model. But still, interpretation of the result will be restricted to limited by our understanding in that model. For example, if you run MOM for 20 years and you found some feature, your interpretation will be still limited because you think it will, that's you believe in that model shows is because of a particular reason. A particular result. But here in our case, we can thoroughly cross-examine because it's our own code, and we are able to understand physics more in detail. So there are advantages and disadvantages there.
Yes. Hello.
Yes.
Oh, I thought it got disconnected. Yeah, it's okay. Means basically we can build up our model like step by step. We can go ahead like that.
Yeah, that is an advantage. And see, for example, Shikha has done a very detailed analysis of energetics in the Arabian Sea, and I have also done a similar analysis. But such a very precise, this kind of result, what is it showing is that the Bay of Bengal mixing has two different empirical modes for the mixer layer budget. So one is showing the TKE, turbulent kinetic energy of the mixer layer model, mixing energy budget, and the stability factors. So if the mode one type of variability, which is controlled by ENSO, which is more of a function that TKE decreases as the stability function increases, that type of relation. But mode two, which is more closely associated with the IOD, has a entirely different impact in the mixing. Here it says that TKE increases with the stability factor for IOD type of forcing. But El Nino type of forcing, it is totally a different way how the mixer energy budget synthesizes those variability internally and produce a net evolution of the mixer layer of the Bay of Bengal. So this type of fine analysis, which is in our hand. So because we know how the energy balance is happening in a mixer layer module, because it's our own model. So this was a very interesting result we brought, and this is kind of a conclusion we arrived. Mechanism of Bay of Bengal MLD interannual variability in response to IOD. This has very detailed anatomy of how ENSO can change the mixing of Bay of Bengal. So such a very thorough analysis is easy if we have a model of our own. Here we propose that there is a deep mixing when there is a El Nino kind of condition, and there is a shallow mixing where there is a La Nina kind of condition, and during and how this is internally controlled by the turbulent kinetic energy budget. For example, the production and buoyancy and dissipation, how they interplay each other to generate this variability. So such details we can analyze by having a model of this. This can be done with MOM also, I agree, of course, but this is more easy if we have a model that we understand thoroughly how this is happening. That is another advantage. Similar thing we have done also for the Arabian Sea and the interannual variability, and we have identified that the regional dependency of mixing process, Arabian Sea interannual variability, certain months are controlled. Sorry, certain regions are controlled in certain months by either buoyancy plus production, or dissipation, the combination of which mixing energetics controls it. So that type of fine analysis we can do with a model which we have a full understanding and control. So this is another work we did it in the Arabian Sea using this particular model.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I think if there is no questions, we'll conclude this session. So I think we just kickstart the workshop today. It may go ahead further a few weeks, I guess, and I hope people will more get. Prajesh is there. Prajesh, welcome. We just started the workshop in between. You were not there in the beginning, but your contribution will be very important for the past the workshop. Maybe first few, yeah, there will be we need to continue the discussion how we can improve for certain problems we found and all. Next few lectures Shikha and Anju will take forward. Yeah.
Okay, then so we stop now.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good. Anyways, so next session will be more of hands-on. I think Shiga starts with porting the code. I will also participate. I also forget time to time how to do it. Pratish, for example, we never did that, and she will teach us. Anju will also teach how to simulate ODTM Nemro and like that. So after the half of the workshop, then we have to really look into comparison of serial code and FMS code, and those kind of details we need to do. Okay, so any other questions, or shall we conclude? Okay, Shiga, then you can conclude then.
Yeah, then we stop for the day, and then we meet again on Friday at 10:30. This is
Okay.
Tuesday and Friday, and the same link will work. So
Yeah,
yes.
sure. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you, everyone.
Thank you everyone for joining. Bye. Bye for today. Yeah.